I was honestly asked this recently. Is it illegal for kids to watch porn? Interesting where this question came from. I'm going to get into that and share some things that you can do as a parent to protect your children. Let's clear up this legal issue first, and then I'll give you some specific tools that you can use as a parent if your child has become drawn into pornography. It's so prevalent. It's a little scary to see what the numbers are. The exposure to pornography starts as early as 5 or 6 or 7 years old. With the prevalence of media and the accessibility of it, it's really common. And by the age of 12, most kids have been exposed to some form of pornography. Now, is it legal for kids to view porn? That's kind of a weird question, actually. It is illegal to show kids pornography. Let's start with that. Okay, now most of them encounter it. A child is not going to be arrested for viewing pornography, but it is illegal for an adult to show a child pornography. I'm guessing when this question came through from one of the viewers that there was some incident happening where the child was being exposed, usually by another parent. And I ran into this when I was doing child custody evaluations, because in those cases people are trying to dig up dirt on the other parent so that they can win their case, right? And if they discover that that kid's been exposed to pornography in the other home, they're going to use that as leverage to try to win their custody case. I think that's where the question was coming from. And yes, it is illegal to show kids pornography. For them to view it may or may not be explicitly illegal, but then we get into another area of child pornography, which is illegal in every jurisdiction I'm aware of, at least in the United States and Canada. And I do know older children or teenagers who have been arrested or incarcerated for trafficking or being involved with child pornography. Now, without getting into all of the yuck that's involved in that particular industry, let's see if we can wrap our heads around how we can protect our kids a little better and what to do if our child is being exposed to pornography or is indulging in pornography on their own. Honestly, I think a more important question has to do with what do we do about this thing rather than is it illegal. Legal or not, the research shows that exposure to pornography has very negative effects, especially on a young developing mind. And it tends to be very addictive in nature, especially for teens and adults. So we want to protect our kids as much as we can. What do you do if you find out that your child is involved? 4 specific steps. Number 1, stay calm. Don't freak out, and you'll feel like it. I have worked with so many parents who, once they discover that their child is viewing pornography, they go through the roof. They totally freak out. This is probably the worst thing that you could do because it actually reinforces some negative patterns in their own mind. Stay calm. Remain calm. Keep breathing. Okay, see if you can channel a little Dr. Paul here. You can't shock me. Honestly, I've been a shrink for almost 30 years. I have heard some of the darndest stuff you can imagine, and you can't shock me. What if you could take that position with your kids? No matter what you're hearing from them, no matter what, you're cool. You can remain calm. Remind yourself, if you need to, that this is important more than it's urgent. This requires a good response, not necessarily a reaction. And that might help you to police your own thinking a little bit so you can just stay calm. We're going to do whatever is necessary to handle this, but that's step 1. Stay calm. I mentioned that this is important. It's not necessarily urgent. And it may have even been going on longer than you know. So it's not the kind of thing that you have to react to right here in the moment. I'm going to say that step 2 is to engage appropriately. Engage appropriately. What does that mean? It depends on the age and stage of development of your child, for one thing. I remember one of our sons coming to talk to us. It was late one evening. I could tell he was nervous, and he said, I saw some stuff on the computer. Okay? And he felt ashamed by that, but it had bothered him enough that he wanted to come and talk to us. Keeping those lines of communication open is really important to engage at the appropriate level. Now, what should we do with that? See, an appropriate engagement might be some discussion. Letting him know that we love him no matter what and even if. Letting him know that this is a common thing that a lot of kids encounter. Helping him to brainstorm some ways that he can stay away from the things that are causing him to feel uncomfortable that he's encountering on the internet. See, that's a different engagement from, let's say that you discover that your child has been engaging in some kind of really hardcore stuff and has not divulged that to you and is trying to keep it a secret still. Well, you might engage a little differently there. So when I say engage appropriately, take some time. It's more important than it is urgent. Take some time, make sure that you understand where your kid's coming from, and then have some kind of an appropriate response. You might want to consult with a professional, a coach, someone who's worked with this before, sometimes a doctor or an ecclesiastical leader, anybody who might have reason to know what kinds of engagements might be appropriate. You don't have to do this on your own. Get some help if you need to. Obviously, that engagement is made easier if you are keeping the lines of communication open. And that's number 3. I want you to appropriately educate and keep the lines of communication open. For my son to come to me and express, hey, I've got this thing that I'm dealing with and I would really like your help with it. That was only possible because we had already established some open communication. Take the time and go to the effort to establish times and contexts where you can have some open communication with your kids. They're not always going to tell you everything that they encounter. Big surprise, okay? You didn't either with your parents. But if you create the context, family dinner, for example, Vicki and I used to have conversations around the dinner table. And this is something that I loved about Vicki's contributions to our family, is she made it very important that we always had family dinner. And that became one of those contexts where we can keep these lines of communication open. Now, I mentioned education too. How are kids going to know unless we tell them? Pornography is a big deal because it's related to sexuality. Sexuality is part of who we are. It's how we're made up. And your kids are going to notice that they are sexual beings at some point. Usually around age 5 is when they start to become aware of sexuality. And then over the next several years and into their teenage years, it's something that's coming up for them quite a bit. They're thinking about it, their friends are talking about it, they're being exposed to things, and it's important during this phase of their life to get some appropriate education. That includes talking to them about sexuality, about their bodies, about the way bodies can be different, about gender. All of these things are on the agenda for what we get to teach our kids. And as a parent, it's your primary responsibility to do this. I would not defer these conversations to the school or to the priest or to the rabbi. You take them on as a parent. Take on the tough conversations. We got some other videos here on the channel that will help you with that. But that's our third step, to educate and keep those lines of communication open. This fourth one is really important. We're going to stay away from guilt and shame. And it's really easy to go there when we're dealing with things like sexuality, pornography. Guilt and shame approaches tend to make the problem worse. We want to keep things open. We want to have that open dialogue and communication that we were talking about in the previous step. And stay away from the guilt and shame. Check your own heart and mind and see where you are with this as a parent. Because as a group, we parents tend to be squeamish about certain topics. Just own that. And if you're feeling uncomfortable about this topic, notice that, and you might practice a little bit with another adult talking about these issues. You might listen to more videos like this and see if you can come up with some strategies and ideas that will help you to feel a little more comfortable. But even if you're not comfortable, you get to take this on. Let's do it in a way that doesn't create more shame and guilt for our kids, but instead opens up the door for them to have some conversations that could really bless their lives. Parenting can be tricky, especially when there are sensitive topics. That's why we've got some programs for you. And if you're ready to take this to a higher level, seriously, jump on a call with one of our coaches. drpauljenkins.com/breakthrough call. We've got a lot of things available, and one of our coaches can walk you through that and find the best fit for you.
Head was down, face locked onto the phone.